Zie je mij?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, welcome everyone to the How to Portfolio. The How to Portfolio will be given by Julius from Paul de Ruiter. After the session, after the presentation, we will go to the sessions where there's a Q&A. And now I would like to give the word to Julius for the How to Portfolio and enjoy.
Okay, thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody. It's a bit I see we're at 32 people attending.
Ik durf niet te vliegen.
I will switch to my presentation view, but you get a glimpse of me. So today we're gonna talk about how you make a portfolio and how you make a good portfolio, of course. Some introductions first, since that's also what you're gonna do. My name is Julius Klatte. I'm an architect at Paul de Ruiter Architects. I also studied at the TU Delft and graduated in 2007 with a master's in architecture and a master's in building technology. What we believe in at Paul de Ruiter Architecture is that we should treat buildings as a source of energy. So we've been making sustainable architecture since before the term sustainability was really getting much attention. And currently we're a team of about 30 architects and technicians. Our office is located in Amsterdam in a former steel workshop, which has been completely renovated. An extra floor was added and is now a really daylight-filled space with lots of greenery, really nice place. What we call practice what you preach, since we really made it sustainable in several aspects. And this telling about yourself thing is, of course, a bit different what we do compared to most people who look for a job. I understood from Bente that you already had some workshops about writing a letter or writing a CV. Well, we make stuff, so we've got something to show for it, and that's why we add the portfolio. So the letter is more or less, why are you applying? You're making connection with a company and telling a story about yourself, what's relevant for the company. The CV is more or less a list. What is your skills, education, experience? And the portfolio is, in a sense, more personal because you're actually showing some of your own work. And that really sets what we do apart from people who only have a CV. So the letter is something that's really personalized. Of course, you could personalize your CV and portfolio for every job you're applying to, but usually that's quite a lot of work. And also, in a sense, it's not what you should consider too much, because you yourself are probably a good match for a company that is interested in you. So personalizing your resume and your portfolio for everyone you talk to is like it's not very consequent. It's about you, so stick to the character of you for those things. So the difference between the CV and portfolio, the CV is more factual and the portfolio is really has room for making it personal. There's also much more freedom in how you set it up, both in format and in layout, the presentation, things to include and whatnot. CV is pretty factual about what you accomplished, and the accomplishments are usually also something that is proven by diplomas or past work experience. And the portfolio doesn't necessarily need that approval. So of course you can include student projects you did at the university or at other schools, but you might consider including other stuff too, if it's relevant, of course. Well, if you talk about format, since they're both about you, you could consider combining them all in one booklet or PDF. Actually, when you consider the fact that your portfolio will probably be lying in on a desk somewhere or in an email box, it's for us receivers, it's pretty useful if they stick together. So when you make a portfolio, it's always a good idea to start with a scheme like this. Maybe some of you saw the TED Talk by Simon Sinek, which is a pretty famous one, explaining that this scheme, why, how, and what, is at the heart of how you can communicate things. So basically, when you consider the scheme, it's always best to start with why. The letter, of course, is an introduction, so you're already indicating why you're applying. Your skill set is more or less the how you're going to be of value, and the what is what you're providing. So what kind of drawings, products, whatever can you provide? So for a portfolio, you could turn this into, it's all about you. That's at the core of it. You have a certain set of skills, and you show off those skills by presenting your products. So you're convincing a recruiter of your value. That's the whole goal of the portfolio. You show your skills by presenting the projects. So what's good to keep in mind is that it's really a personal story. It's about you, and it's not about your product. It's not a catalog. It's not an autobiography of everything you did. What you want to show is something that you think is important to tell about you and your capabilities. It's easy to get sidetracked, to get started at what project did I do, and start making a portfolio based on that. But the risk is that there's no clear story. There's no narrative. So if you consider yourself an architect who is a really conceptual thinker, and well, you make spectacular designs, well, then probably this focus on the iconic or spectacular and is something that you want to start with, because that also helps you judge which projects are relevant and which are not. Now, if you're more technically oriented and really want to focus on materials and details, that probably moves you in a different direction. Also, the type of photography you might include of physical models, that sort of thing. To give you some examples, which you can also, of course, do yourself, is look at architects' websites. You probably already did that if you're orienting for an internship or a job. But just let us go through a couple of them to see how they handle the fact that they're more or less making a portfolio online, but make it quite differently. So if we start at the famous firm of David Chipperfield Architects, and we move to the project section, what we see is quite a visual simplicity. Right? We only see the pictures, there's no text, there's no accompanying indication of when or what or where. So it's very restrained. And of course, that's also something we can see in the work of David Chipperfield Architects. So it sort of fits their style. It's pretty much a neutral catalog. If you go to their projects, you see the kind of pictures they show, and they focus on material quality, on detailing. They really show quite a lot of pictures without people in it. So architecture as something to be observed. Of course, not necessarily that's the only thing, but they really want to present their architecture as a pure object. Now you can also look at their people section, which shows a whole staff list of the partners, the principals, and the directors. There's a lot of order being presented here with all the lines. There's this hierarchy by emphasizing the roles. The linearity of everything suggests a certain precision in how the office is organized. Now, by contrast, let's look at another big office. The Danish office, Bjarke Engels Group. What we see there when we enter the website is that every project is presented as an icon. It's color-coded for its function. The pixel font really draws attention to the fact that everything is sort of squarish. And it seems to be that every project is very unique. It has a brand, it has a logo. And when you move to their projects, it's also, they continue presenting this logo to show how they define certain simple schemes and turn that into a building. So a lot of pictures also emphasize the whole project and the context, the siting, sort of response that the project is giving to its surroundings. And that's also something that they emphasize by providing diagrams, like the building is some sort of logical response to its context. There are certain manipulations going on to achieve effects. Now, if we look at our own website, of course, I'm sort of biased on this one. What we see is that we present in our menu planet and process first, and then projects. Now, if we click to the projects, we have pretty large images. Sometimes we also present interiors rather than the exteriors of the hero image, something that you don't often see. But we really follow a philosophy where sometimes we really design buildings from the inside out. So the facade is not generally the most important aspect of it. It is very important, so most projects are presented like that. But if you consider a picture like this, then apparently the interior of that building is the most important. Now, if you go to a certain project, what you would see is that there's some icons showing its performance in terms of sustainability. And there's also a whole narrative about the project. So it's not just about showing images and some facts about square meters. Actually, what we try to do is guide you through what made the project. So it's a scrolling page, and it will show you diagrams, text and images together. So you can really understand what made this project. And the values and the design principles of the firm are also clearly stated on the planet and the process pages. So this focus on how things are made or how they came to be and why they are like this is quite important in our work. So you can see the problem of the portfolio is more or less done in similar fashion, but the way it's presented is quite different. So we go back to the circular scheme, the why, how, what, or the you skills project. So at the core of it is you, and what is there to think about? Of course, there's your personality, your motivation, which could also be stated in your letter, of course. What you're actually showing in your portfolio is not really yourself, but it gives you some hold of your portfolio to start with the kind of things that are important to you. So self-knowledge is the starting point of how you want to structure your portfolio. You think are important, the things you want to emphasize, and also the kind of projects you would like to do, or the kind of firms you would like to work on. You can sort of mirror your personality to your ideal personality and see how that could help you. Now, if you move to the skills, I'm not going through all these skills, but you can look back at the presentation I've heard. So the value you bring to an employer is what you can do for him. And sometimes it's analytical, sometimes it's design, and it always has to do with organization and communication. You can judge your own projects and see what kind of skills show up there. You could also think about it the other way around and think, okay, how can I show to the potential employer that I'm well-rounded in certain skills. And also it helps you to think about the skills that you still lack or you think need development, because that could be something to just be honest about. Maybe not show it in your portfolio what you're lacking, but something to consider that in a job interview, that it's something to talk about, because when you apply to a job or an internship, we don't expect you to know everything and do everything at a high level. So it actually makes sense that you think about how you want to grow. And then the projects, they're the proof, but they really depends on what you did. So how can you think about your projects? I would say there's 3 aspects that make a good portfolio. It's clarity, it's focus, and it's depth. The clarity is clarity of thought. So think about what you're presenting and think about how you're presenting it. Clarity in presentation, the way you visualize everything and structure it. And the focus is in leaving things out. You really want to narrow down on the projects that you think are important and you really have a story to tell about. The relevance for the job is, of course, important, especially if you're including things that are not necessarily architectural or urban planning projects, depending on what your field of focus is. But other things could be relevant to include. And then depth is, the way maybe that you can show not just the projects, but actually really go into a certain level of detail to show that you are in control of the whole process. So it's depth of character, and that you really have the guts to make choices, and that you really have the intelligence to make good choices and the skills to make it work. So if we start by clarity, this is a lot of text, but maybe it's also something to read back. I would say simple graphic design is usually best. Of course, you can think up a scheme like Bjarke Ingels did, but you probably don't have a lot of projects that you want to present. So it's best to keep it simple and not go too far in trying to point out that you're also capable of graphic design. So visual coherence is the do there, and mixing a lot of styles and fonts and colors and using backgrounds is just distracting. It's not going to help. A clean layout, the second tip, also means that do use white space. And in that sense, I just mean that if you have a white sheet of paper, don't cram it full of pictures and plans and sections. Use the space available to put emphasis on the things that are important and provide focus on that. So don't clutter with so much stuff mixing together. So the content, third tip, is what you want to emphasize. And you can use the graphic design to help with that and not make it a distraction. So everything you add in terms of lines or frames or whatever you want to use is mostly a distraction, but it could help to point out things. Then ensuring legibility means that, okay, you can lay out something that looks good on your screen, maybe, but it might be a good idea to check what it looks like on another screen. And if you're providing a print, of course, you want to see a proof print before you send something out. What we typically see is that sometimes people include like heavy line drawings that really are slow to load and really a bunch of dark black lines on the screen. Really made for print, not for a screen. So if people email a portfolio and don't send us a letter and a portfolio, then usually we don't print the portfolio either, unless you really stick out and your portfolio is added to the pre-selection. And maybe we could print it out, but maybe we even don't. So if the screen is the media of your choice, then ensure that it's legible on screen. If you're printing, then make sure it's legible on print. And well, last thing to help you out with this clarity is really to talk to other people. Ask for feedback on what others see and read, because maybe your narrative is clear to you, but it could be that other people just see really different stuff, especially if you're providing diagrams or conceptual explanations. It could be that people read completely differently from what you think is very clear. So it's not a personal work of art. It's not something you stick to yourself, because it's something you communicate with. So test the communication of it. So we move to the header of the focus. It's especially important to consider that the time that is being spent on judging your portfolio is small. Especially if you're sending a job application where there's no clear vacancy, then your portfolio will be seen very quickly. If it's something that a company will keep for a moment that they need someone, or it will be dismissed. Now, if there's a job opening, then usually there is some time reserved for judging the portfolios that come in. But still, don't expect it to be more than a little time. So the number of projects, really try to limit it. 3 to 5 is a pretty good example, but don't be afraid if it's just 3 that you think are good enough. We'll get to that later, but it could provide you actually space to go into depth about what makes these projects good. So the more you include, the more pages you'll probably be adding. And well, if you consider that the time spent is little, and then maybe you want to have that time spent on the project and not just leafing through your 80 pages of portfolio. So the narrative you want to tell is important, and the projects that are fitting to that. It's not a complete archive. Well, there are people who use extensive text to show their whole conceptual development. I would say you need to provide some insights, like a lens to view the imagery through. You don't want to rely on just images. You do want to provide some text to provide an insight in what makes this project relevant, but be concise. Focus means eliminating stuff, and it's probably eliminating at first, and it helps to put an extra effort in and go through your portfolio and see if you can eliminate even more. You don't want to overthink it and make it into a life's work and really spend so much time on it that you're missing on the jobs you really want to head for. But eliminating is something that is good to do at the when you might think you're almost finished. It helps to focus. And the final thing to focus on is the work that you actually did. For example, you did an internship at an office. What we see a lot is that people would show a whole bunch of professional renderings of the projects they work on, which they obviously didn't do themselves, or they actually tell that they didn't do it themselves, but it's not really clear what their added value to the project was. So if you worked on something in an office or collaborated on the university, then make it clear what actually your contribution was, rather than just show the end result. And then clarity and focus would help you make place for depth. If you show a project, then usually there's some form of analysis that you did that would give the direction to your project. So you have some analytical skills that you want to demonstrate. And you can do it in text to show what the design problem was, or the assignment, or the commission, when it's a project done in a professional setting. And it's about problem solving. You don't have to fit every design decision into the story, but if you can show that you put some thought into why this project came to be in a certain way, then it helps to guide the reader along, of course. And the same goes for the development of the design intent. So maybe you have a solution, but then how do you develop that into an actual project that is, for example, buildable or technically feasible, or all the aspects that go into an architectural or urban design project. If you have some focus, then you don't need so many pages to show this development of design intent, but you could imagine that you include some sketches of the first phase, and then how you turn that into the final drawings. And yeah, that we can really see how you think up solutions for something. Which also points to the next point, is that you have a set of skills, and well, for some people maybe hand sketching would be their unique selling point. Then of course they want to include their sketches, but maybe you're really good at making artist impressions, and then 3D rendering, that sort of stuff. You might want to show that, and we would be interested in your technical capabilities too. So if you did large plans or sections or detailed drawings, do show that you're also capable of doing stuff like that. You might want to consider that not every project shows this whole skill set, because it would become pretty cramped probably. So if you have a project which was developed technically quite far, then maybe that's the project that you want to select in your portfolio to give an insight into your prowess in technical drawings, and use another project to show that you're a conceptual thinker. This also adds depth to the portfolio. That it's not a repetition of what you can do on every project, but that certain projects help you develop certain skills. And this also goes for the personal touch that you could add. And you could, maybe you did a carpentry workshop, or you built some furniture, or whatever you did that could be relevant, which shows a skill set that could be interesting for the office. It also adds some insight into what you do besides university or internships. I would say it has to be related to be relevant, but it's something you can judge for yourself. I mean, maybe you like to cook, but generally that would not be something to show. But if you do it at a level that is worth mentioning, then maybe it could be. So if you go to these three aspects of a good portfolio, I would say it's like a pyramid. You start with the clarity, and if you have the clarity fixed in your portfolio, then you can provide focus. And if you have focus, then you can go into depth. You can't go into depth if there's no focus, because there would be no room, and it's very hard to go into depth if you want to show everything. And you can't focus if there's no clarity of thought or a selection that really makes sense. So that's the framework. Now, I could imagine that you would also be interested in some tips on the final how and what's. My tip would be, if you send an email, use PDFs as attachments, nothing else. No zip files, no Word documents or anything. And also attach those files. Don't link to a download like WeTransfer, because the chance that it will be downloaded is there, but you will have to maybe wait a couple of weeks before you get a response. And if we then read your email again and try to click the link, it will be expired, and then that's really annoying. So if you're going to add it to an email, then of course optimizing the file size is relevant, and also check the screen appearance. Your portfolio will probably be judged on screen, so you can consider a landscape format if you really want to pop out there. But of course, you can also consider sending a print portfolio, especially if there's a job opening and you're really in competition with other applicants. Well, regardless of how you apply, if you have an interview, then you definitely bring a print portfolio. You can consider the physical appearance of the portfolio too. It's something I didn't go into, but of course, the type of paper, the type of binding you use, the size at which you actually print it is relevant to how it comes over. There is some advantage of sending a physical portfolio. over emails. But it really also has to do with the physical appearance. So if it's a really nice booklet and you really put a lot of effort into it, and it has a certain level of impression that makes the portfolio stick around on our desks, then it will stick around. With emails, of course, it's easy to forget. We can still archive it digitally, and we will. But if you think you can provide a very nice print portfolio, then you could definitely do so. If you're sending your portfolio to a great selection of offices, then maybe that's a bit of an expensive option. Well, also in print, it's important to once you print it, check this legibility. And last but not least, just be confident about what you're doing and show this confidence in the communication. So both in providing the portfolio, be daring enough to make it personal. And knowing yourself is half the task of finding a match with someone else. Once you've sent out your application, you can definitely phone, but it's not something to do immediately when you send out the email. Offices generally take up a certain point in the week to look at different portfolios, to really also be able to compare them. So it's not something that is done immediately. Of course, there's a big chance, as in any job opening, there's more people applying than is getting the job. There's a big chance of getting turned down, and it's an opportunity to learn. You can ask for feedback, and we will provide some feedback if you call us. Don't be surprised if it's not a lot of feedback, because what I just said, it's also sometimes a comparison. It could be that you really make it a really good portfolio, but somebody else stood out or had more experience in the type of work that we really have available. So sometimes it's personal, and sometimes it's about others you're in competition with. I would like to move to the questions, and what I understood from Bente is that we will move to the sessions for that.
Yes.
And I would like to also point out that we're helping students with their portfolio, giving feedback on March 17th. And if you have more questions about our office, then we will be present on the sessions on March 24th.
Yes, everyone can still sign up for the portfolio check until Thursday, and that can via the BAU site. And yeah, thank you, Julius, for giving the how to portfolio for me, but I think also for a lot of other students, it was very helpful and clear. And we go to the, we will move to the sessions. Everyone can find it on the left side on the screen, and there is a Q&A session. And there, everyone can ask their questions to you if there are any questions. So we will see each other there.
Okay.